And moving on to the session two. Session two will be chaired by Dr. Kamyani Vashad, Associate Professor, Department of English, Center of Excellence, Government College, Sanjali, Simla, Himachal Pradesh. And the presenters are Dr. Bhumika Chopra, Assistant Professor, UCET, Bikaner Technical University, Bikaner, Rajasthan. Next one, Dr. Okmula Walling, the Department of History and Archaeology, Nagaland University. Mrs. Bibi Moideen, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Giridibam College, Kottayam, Kerala. And the last one is Nayan Mary Tom, a research scholar, Center for English Studies, Central University of Gujarat. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Serlin. Is
thank
that how I pronounce your name?
Yeah, thank you. Sure. Yeah, right.
Thank you very much, Serlin. I joined Himraj's session a little late, but as usual, I think he brings in a lot of scholarly interventions to any forum that he's part of. And I don't know if I can do that. I think I'm going to enjoy listening to the speakers. Instead of making some opening remarks, I think let's just begin with the presentations first. Let me invite Dr. Bhumika Chopra. Are you here, Dr. Bhumika?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am.
Right. Wonderful. So Bhumika is going to speak on her paper is titled Feminist Vision in Nayanthara Sehgal's novel, The Day in Shadow. Come, Bhumika. We are so eager to hear you.
Yes, good morning, everyone. The topic of my paper is Feminist Vision in Nayanthara Sehgal's novel, The Day in Shadow. Indian women novelists became aware of the pathetic condition of women and tried in the direction of awakening about their victimization. Nayanthara Sehgal, the most prominent Indian literary icon, attempts to acquaint the readers about feminine concerns and women's identity. She sees women as victims of conventional Indian society engaged in their quest for identity. The Day in Shadow, a novel with gender issues, unravels the plight of Indian women who try to carve niche in the dangerous zone, thus exposing the cruel face of patriarchal society. It deals with the struggle of a young, educated, and audacious Indian woman ensnared shrewdly in the web of atrocious divorce settlement. Smrit Raman, the heroine of the novel, gets suffocating environment with her husband Som. Her self-image is battered by Som's patriarchal domination. Therefore, she gathers up courage to seek divorce from Som to be free. But after getting divorced, she realizes that it is too appalling and cruel situation to move as a divorcee in society. It is very difficult for a wife to relate herself to the world without her husband. Thus, marriage becomes an inevitable trap for women. Smrit actually divorces her husband at the risk of facing misery, economic limitations, depressive attacks of loneliness, and a score of other existential troubles and tribulations. It mirrors internal dilemma of Indian woman who is a writer and a freelance journalist. S.K. Tiku, in the article The Day in Shadow, an experiment in feminist vision, rightly remarks the novelist's unflagging concentration on Smrit's mental anguish, the quiet struggle she wages, and her continued fight till the end gives novel the veritable aspect of feminist fiction. Feminist stance of Nayanthara Sehgal can be viewed from the very beginning of the novel. Smrit finds that even in parties get-together, the mob asks, "What does your husband do?" and not what is her own status and identity. Women's individual identity has not been positively and open-mindedly realized in her marriage. In the male-dominated society, where women are considered second-grade citizens, her status is according to the status of her husband. Smrit realizes, wasn't it odd when you were standing there yourself, fully a person, not to be asked what you did? Marriage itself remains the predominant goal for most young women. Though marriage only girls get respected and accepted place in society. It is just like a weapon which is hammered to admit male hegemony. And finally, after a series of questions put to her, when she replies that she is a divorcee, she is looked at with different eye by the crowd. She feels as if she had broken out in spots and scales, because she had never accepted a world where men did things and women waited for them, and finally she desires that the party would end or she could disappear from it. Som is a materialistic person. He gives more importance to money and power than to human feelings. The time when Smith hesitatingly tells Som that she is pregnant, her reaction to it is completely devoid of tenderness. Insensitive to the feelings of his wife, he says, one boy is all anyone should have. Brothers always quarrel about money. Women are always ignored by men, especially in professional conversations or business details, because they are considered to be feeble and their function is to bear children and nurture them. Som, the embodiment of Indian husband, also neglects his wife totally. She is entirely marginalized from Som's world. Her role is merely of a decorative piece. After a war, when Smith returns, she finds that Lali and Som both are busy in conversation. Both of them don't even look at her. Her presence is totally ignored. The other instance is when Som and Lali talk endlessly with each other. Smith is physically present in the room, but both do not share talks with her. It was great mental torture for Smith, who wanted to be treated as his equal in business conversation. But Som did not deem it fit to involve her. For Som, Lali and other business acquaintances were more significant to him than Smith. But for educated and sensitive women like Smith, this is totally unacceptable. She desires that her presence should be felt as every human being wishes. She also does not sense the company of Som even though he is physically present. There is a lack of emotion and warmth in their relationship. She wants that her individual identity should be recognized, but by overpowering personality of Som, it was crushed. She recollects the experience she once had during the long drive along the beach. This drive along the beach, you shared it with Som, didn't you? Oh God, no. I sat in the car with him, that was all. A more recent full and pitiable phase of women's marginalization embarks on after marriage, when she is not recognized as an individual and is deprived of human status. Marriage is a divine union of two minds. It is the society that has so maliciously manipulated it to the favor of men at the expense of women. Marriage is a very complex relationship that has to grow and bloom in the rich soil of love, sacrifice, and adjustment. But unfortunately, society has interpreted it that all these qualities have to come from women and the men are always exempted. Som thinks that wife is an object for his personal pleasures. He would often boast before his friends, "Look what I have got, good enough to keep under lock and key." Smith has chosen a husband for her, and now, after marriage, she does not have liberty to choose anything. She is never allowed to speak or act in an autonomous fashion, but is spoken to or acted upon. She is never allowed to be subject in her own right. If she punished the cook and dismissed him for drunkenness and wrong behavior, Som retained him, and Som had superior hand in the choice of even bed covers and curtains. Smith always feels that there is something wrong with Som's world. Som's world is the world of patriarchy, where women cannot have identities of their own. Smith herself realizes that Som could have forgiven her, and the consequent divorce would have been avoided if she would have considered herself submissive, dependent, and weaker being than him. But Smith finds it a suffocating experience. Som's hostile possessiveness can be glimpsed when he favors Lali's murder of his wife. Smith is horror-struck when she comes to know about it. But Som is not stirred and casually tells her, what a man does with his wife is his private affair. It shows his view that husband has unending powers on his wife. Now, divorce leads Som to the world of liberty, but Smith is entangled in the intricate terms of tax. The consent terms are in favor of children, or in the clear words, for the male child. Here she has to sacrifice her freedom for children. Segal's women respond in the rebellious manner to the suffering caused by loneliness, inequality in patriarchal culture. Smith leaves Som after 17 years of gloomy and discontented marriage. As Smith longs for love in the form of individuality, but could not get it, so she steps out of the marriage by seeking divorce. Segal explores the emotional world of women who carve niche in the dangerous zone of patriarchal society. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Bhumika. I haven't read the novel, but I do understand that the novel does explore the dynamics of divorce for an Indian woman. And I assume that this novel would be written sometime in the 1950s. And therefore, the experience of divorce back then, at least 70 years back then, would be a little different for women in India than it is today. And I was wondering, though I did read a little bit of summary of the novel before I came into this session, so I assume that there was another person in the story, which you have not spoken about. And I was a little intrigued why you did not talk about him. One, because yes, there is the whole concept of divorce, and it is a very complicated experience for Simrit. And then I was, wondering if the idea of monogamy is a bigger burden for women, and therefore divorce becomes a bigger complication for women. Having said that, how did you perceive her subsequent relationship with the second person, with the second man in her life, in light of her divorce? I would like to hear a little bit of what you feel about that.
Actually, ma'am, what Smirit's condition was, it was something typical one, because in that male-dominated society she was living, and she is moving out of the shackles of marriage. And the time when the novel was written, at that time, it was very difficult for a women to step out there. They are moving out from that place, from the bond, which is generally considered. This bond is for seven ages, and that bond, if you are stepping out. So this novel, as Nayanthara Sehgal, is just exposing out or giving out a good platform that though she is having, it's not that she just want to have a relationship with the other person, like Raj is the other person whom she wants to have, she finds herself comfortable with. So that was the thing. But the position which the novelist has explored is basically the problem which the women is facing there, how they are totally again in the chains. When, as of, if a man is opting for divorce, he is free there. He is free there. He can go, as explained by the novelist, he can go anywhere, he can move anywhere. But for her, it is a typical situation to move in a society. So it becomes a typical situation. In the present era, if we are considering it, the education or the women are independent. So they are not going to face that much problem as she has faced. So that was just a, we can say, a rising platform for her.
Yes, and I think it was, again, a very upper class thing for Simrit and for Nayanthara Sehgal to have brought in a person like Raj as the confidant. And the fact that the author gives her the freedom. I think it is an autobiographical, emotional story. And therefore, the writer does want to give Simrit that freedom to seek that kind of emotional succor and emotional shelter in yet another man, which is Raj. Of course, I think Som becomes the stereotypical epitome of all things patriarchal, and Raj becomes an alternative to patriarchal masculinity and to, a benign masculine presence in women's lives. I find that sentence that you wrote a little, very, very telling when you said that he says what a man does with his wife is a private affair, and which is actually the most telling, that, this dichotomy, and obviously also the overlapping between what is private and public and political at the same time, and therefore how he treats his wife within the confines of the house, within the confines of the marriage, is also telling of how women would be treated in public spaces, in traditions, in conventional formats. So, Bhumika, thank you very much for that paper. And
Thank
I
you.
would now invite Dr. Okumla Walling,
Aukumla Waling, yes, ma'am.
who is from the Department of History and Archaeology in Nagaland University.
Yes,
And she
ma'am.
will speak on women in traditional Naga society, lenses through beliefs and sayings. Come.
Okay. Is my PowerPoint visible?
No.
My PowerPoint is not visible.
No, it's
Okay,
your
let me,
PowerPoint is not visible. I think your screen is visible, but not the PowerPoint.
okay, let me try it again. Okay, I don't know how do I do about an. Okay, let me try again. So presenting. Okay, your entire screen. How is it?
Not yet, Akumla.
Okay, is it okay if I don't show the PowerPoint? I'll just read it out.
Yes.
Yeah, is it okay? Hi,
Yeah.
good morning, everyone.
We can
Oh,
see it now, though.
Okay, great. Okay, good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Aukumla Waling, Assistant Professor from the Department of History and Archaeology. And thank you very much for giving me this platform this morning. My topic is on the woman in traditional Naga society, understanding it through the beliefs and sayings. Now, traditional Naga society, it revolves around omens, beliefs, and sayings, taboos. And from birth till death, an individual is tied up to such norms which they had to adhere to it. Now, before the coming of Christianity and modern education, that is still the 19th century, these traditions guided and marked almost every aspect of the Naga society. And this reflects on the gender relations, men and women, on the status and placement of the gender in the society, and as well as on their roles. Now, my paper which focuses on the woman through understanding through beliefs and sayings. Most of the examples are drawn from the narratives of the Sumi and the Ao tribes. But whatever examples that I'm using this morning, many are like applicable to almost all the tribes of the Nagas, and they practices that one regarding women. And though many of them are not believed to be practiced these days, we cannot say that it will be eradicated because these are very strongly, rooted in the culture and in the lifestyle of the Nagas. When we look into the bird, there are so many beliefs and sayings, but I take out some sayings. And one is this is taken out from the Ao beliefs and saying, and it is that if a girl child is born during a lunar eclipse, which is called as the Laram, she is believed to grow without any good moral character. Now, Aos associate a girl with moon and the sun with boy. So if a girl is born on a lunar eclipse, she is considered lacking beauty, tenderness, calmness, modesty, and also being wicked. A rooster is killed to mark the birth of a boy child and a hen for a girl. It is believed it is if a rooster is killed when a girl is born, she may roam out from the house and may not stay like the rooster. However, it can be killed. It can be killed when a boy is born. Now, females are also prohibited to to eat rooster on her first initiation of taking solids because it is believed that all the animals have a mating season except the rooster. Therefore, if eaten by a female, she possesses the character of a cock, that is the rooster. Now, the rooster symbolizes, it is a symbolic fowl. It symbolizes wisdom, according to the Sumis, and it plays a very vital role, marking the morning, the nighttime, to wake up and introducing people to a new day. Now, moreover, when we look into rooster, it is believed that roosters are elegant, dignified looking, and to own roosters were a matter of joy and pride. So a rooster was always associated with boy, and while growing up, A boy grows up in the traits of a rooster that is wise, elegant, and dignified. A hen is always associated with woman, which is taken to be obedient and mild. So women are expected to grow obedient and mild.
I seem to have lost your voice, Akumla. Can the others hear her?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Can
No,
we hear Akumla?
we can't.
No,
No,
we
no,
can't
no.
hear us.
Hmm. Can somebody please connect with her and let her know that we can't hear her anymore?
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
Thank you.
Um, Dr. Kamyani,
Yes, Serlin.
ma'am, she's not here. Shall we go with the next presenter?
Yeah, I think we should do that. In that case, I think we can move to the next presenter, which is Mrs. Bibi Moithin.
Yeah, ma'am.
All right.
Yeah, thank you,
So
ma'am.
Bibi Moithin is assistant professor at Department of English in Kottayam in Kerala, and she's going to speak on the changing trends in ghost films in Malayalam film industry. I'm sure we can go back to Okumla when she comes back because I was quite fascinated by the paper that she was reading. I hope we can go back to it later. But for now, let's have Mrs. Bibi Moithin's paper, please. Welcome.
Okay.
Good morning. I am Bibi Moitin and I am Assistant Professor in the Department of English at Girdivam Institute of Advanced Learning, Kerala. And the topic I'm going to present today is the changing trends in ghost films in Malayalam film industry. Okay, like to share my screen. Ma'am, is my PPT visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. So my topic is changing trends in ghost films in Malayalam film industry. So horror movies, that is a very popular genre, whether it is an Indian scenario or whether it is an international film industry. We have a good number of audience to watch horror movies. There are different types, like we have thrillers, then we have detective movies, and there are movies which deals with man-made and natural calamities and disasters. Then certain movies deals with victimization, which creates horror in the spectators. And of course, supernatural elements, and that is the ghost movies. They have a prime audience when it comes to any film industry. So when we take the traditional Malayalam horror movies, starting from the first traditional Malayalam horror movie, which came in this genre, that is a ghost movie narration, was in 1964. It was the film was Bhargavi Nilayam. And the latest one that came in 2021 is Cold Case. So this is, the paper is just a journey from what has happened to the ghost narrations in Malayalam movie from this Bhargavi Nilayam till the Cold Case. So the traditional Malayalam horror movies always dealt with the Yakshi myth, the myth of the Yakshi. So the Yakshi, they are considered as spirits which are revenge-seeking. These spirits, while they were humans, the young women, they were brutally murdered, and they may some were victimized to rape, and sometimes because of some reasons, they and even the family members were brutally murdered when they were young. And the soul, it won't leave the world and it come back to seek revenge. Since they become more powerful when it's become a spirit, they can easily take revenge and they kill the people who have wronged them. Now, the Yakshi myth. So this is what a Yakshi is, a revenge-seeking spirit. So this is a part of the Kerala cultural psyche, and it is deep-rooted even among the youngsters of Kerala. From young, small children to the adults, everybody's aware about this Yakshi myth in Kerala. So these Yakshis are very sensual, beautiful dancers with magical powers. They always appear in white sari, and they have sharp eyes, kajal eyes, long untied hairs, and their feet never touch the ground. Then they sing sweet melancholic song, and that is how they, with the sensual beauty and the music, they attract the victims. And then they turn, once the victims are with them, they turn into blood-sucking fiends and pounce on the victim. And it is believed that these Yakshis, they reside on the Edilam Pala, which is in English is known as the devil tree. And the myth of Kalyangalat Neeli, Kalyas of later, that is the earlier ghost movies in Malayalam films. So from 1964, it has started with Bhargavi Nilayam. Since 1960s, we have Yakshi, Lisa, and then coming to 80s, we have Karimbucha. Then coming to 90s, there is Sri Krishna Parinda, Manchatra Tada. Then 2000, we have Akasha Ganga, Velli Nakshatram, Indriyam, and a lot of movies till Yakshiyam Jnanam in 2010. See, all these movies from 1964 to around 2010, we have these movies, horror movies, ghost movies, dealing with a myth of Yakshi. So there is a spirit which is possessed. And this Yakshi myth has remained till the early part of the 21st century. We can see that in the Malayalam movies. And the young girls, once these spirits to take revenge, they possess the body of young girls. And it is through these young girls that they take the revenge. And they are, at the end, they are exorcised by the priests, that the Mandravadis, and they leave the possessed body only after taking the revenge. So once this spirits leave the body, they will be nailed into a tree. So this is how it happens in all these movies. So from 1960s to 2010, we can see that it was the same. Now, the factors that create horror in the earlier ghost films, it is of course the music. Since the Yakshis, they are they sing, so there is music. Then there is howling sounds in the background, and the nature too reacts. There will be always they persist on sharing or showing a black cat or bats and animals, wild animals on the stage, because then nature is aware about the presence of the Yakshi. Then brutal murders committed by the Yakshis, that also creates horror among the spectators. Then at the last, towards the end climax, it always ends with an exorcism conducted by the Mandravadi. That also hope it was clear. Ma'am, was that clear?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you. So this is how the Yakshi was presented in all these movies till 2010, 2000, these years. It was this Yakshi, the white sari, a clad, beautiful young girl singing a melody song, and it creates horror. Now, the new trends, how the from after this in 2015 onwards, we can see a change in the horror genre. So we have techno horrors or techno thrillers coming to Malayalam industry. So this Yakshi, it is replaced by spirits. So after the recent Malayalam movies which deals with spirits, they no longer showcases the Yakshi. It is replaced by spirits. And in Predam 1 movie, we can see instead of a white sari wearing spirit, we can see a black dressed spirit. Then in the movie Bhutakalam, we can see that all the spirits in that movie, they are in ordinary attires. They are freed from, the spirits are freed from the white sari. And even in the movie Esra, we can see that there is a male spirit instead of the female spirit. So all the earlier movies, they used to present female spirit. So in this particular movie Esra, we have a male spirit, and it is from a Jewish background. Now, the intervention of technology and gadgets can be seen. In Predam 1 and 2, the spirit communicates through a laptop, and in the movie Cold Case, it is through a refrigerator that the spirit take the revenge. Then Chadurmugam, yet another horror fiction, we can see that it's just through the smartphone that the spirit get involved in its revenge. Then in Esra, it is a debug. So the concept of we can see that the concept of Yakshi has started changing. And the new plot. See, earlier the plot was the young girl who seeks revenge through murder, and now the plot has changed. The plot usually deals with socially relevant subjects like maybe bullying, ostracism, kidnapping, infidelity, social media influence, and tech-savvy people. So the life of all these things, or all these these effects actually have led to the death of these people, and they come back to take revenge. And in Predam 1, the spirit has come back to seek the revenge because the nude scenes of the Clara is the her spirit, and her nude scenes while she was taking a bath was leaked. It was leaked in the online, and she couldn't bear the shame, so Clara committed suicide, and she comes back as a spirit to take revenge. Then in Predam 2, we can see the spirit of Manav, who was a social media addict, and he was cheated by a credit card fraud, and he had to commit suicide. And he also comes back. Then there is Chadurmugam. It is because of this movie shows the addiction of the people towards smartphones and social media, and how it disturbs their life. Then Bhutakalam, in Bhutakalam, there's a different plot. It presents psychological dimensions. Instead of believing in spirits and myths, and there is a trend to attempt to give a psychological dimension to the plot. Then in the movie 9, there is psychological dimension given. Along with that, an atmosphere of alien invasion is created, instead of creating a new tech-savvy people and the technology interfering with spirits and ghost movies. So then the changes that we can notice is from old mansion and forest, there is a shift to towns, beach, and modern mansions. Instead of this mentioning about spirits and souls, the movie mentions it as paranormal activities instead of saying as seeing as a spirit. The modern people want to see it as a paranormal activity. And then instead of this mandravadi or the priest who used to do the exorcism, it is changed to psychologist. There's a mentalist and the scientist, and they are trying to find a problem for this issue. Now, in conclusion, see, it was earlier times, it was the myths that used to create horror among the people, but modern men no longer myths can create horror. So what horrifies a modern man is the things that is happening around the current society, like the cyber crimes, the bullying is happening, and the over involvement of social media and technology. So that creates more horror among the people. So this, according to Indian aesthetics, any emotion is created through the bhava. See, so the uddibana vibhava, that is the root cause of any fear. So we can see that this bhayanaga rasa, or the fear of horror, is no more created by the Yakshi myths with the modern times. It has the root cause, or the Uddipana Vibhava has changed in the modern times. With the times, it has also changed. So no longer can the old concept of myths and the whole ghost can no longer create horror among the modern men. Thank you.
Thank you, Bibi Moitin. Thank you so much. That was quite a fascinating journey for us, from Yakshis to the laptops. I just have a few observations. I don't even know if I have questions. I think the questions and observations are somewhere muddled together, so it's for you to make sense of them. One, I think it's fascinating to see that you said Yakshi, the ghost movies in Malayalam have traveled from Yakshis to Yakshis not actually being the source of horror anymore. I wonder if, myths really die at all. I think there's always going to be only an evolution of myths, and similar patterns keep on evolving. It's just that the details of the myths might change, and we have newer myths that will emerge from older myths. And therefore, I feel that the Yakshi image has only been replaced by another image now, let's say the deep web or the dark web, which was suggestive through the laptop becoming a source, or the possessed. But also, I wonder if you can see the resemblance of the deep web with the Yakshi in the human psyche, wherein Freud, calls the female mind or the female body a dark forest, which can never be explored, and therefore can and will always be a source of mystery for the male mind. And I think through the ages, whatever has caused people to feel horrified has always had a feminine aspect, because that was the dark, the unknown dark, and the something that you cannot explore and therefore you cannot control, which I think has only traveled from the female body to the internet space, or the dark web, or science fiction. And I think the fact that you are basically all these horror films and all the ghost films are culminating in some kind of exorcism, let's say from very ancient examples of witch hunting to the Salem witch trials in the 17th century in Europe, to the modern day exorcism through psychotherapy. So it has only had a certain journey, which is not very different from what happened earlier, or how horror worked 50 years ago, or 70 years ago, or 200 or 300 years ago. So I think the whole aspect of there being some kind of mystery and fear of the feminine body, and the deep web being equal to the deep mystery of the female body, I think that is where we still haven't really evolved. If you go back to this visual that you showed, wherein the laptop was becoming the instrument of possession, there was this woman who was on the screen, and she said, "I am Clara." I think the fact that the laptop should assume a feminine character is manifestation of the fact that the female or the feminine will always be the primary force of fascination, of mystery. And because that fascination and mystery can never really be, fathomed in its entirety, therefore becoming horrific at some stage. But I was quite interested in how you were able to deconstruct these elements of horror through these centuries, not the centuries, but decades, and how you were able to, explore the evolution of the ingredients of horror and the manifestations of horror. Thank you. Would you like to say something else?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. That was like quite enlightening. The new actually, I never thought about that, comparing the female body with the dark web. I will of course add that too in my paper. Thank you for that review.
Yes, especially because for a large part, the female body was associated with the power of creation, right? And the power of creation has always fascinated the human mind because you don't know how things are really created. And then the female body, and of course, the whole process of the monthly cycles of menstruation. So, all these things about the female body have always repulsed and fascinated the male mind together. And that repulsion and fascination, the attraction and repulsion, the force, that tension between these two, the attraction and repulsion, they kind of create this kind of mystery around the body. And therefore, whatever is mysterious in this world, or whatever is horrific, or whatever can cause terror, always assumes some kind of feminine power.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wonderful. Akmola, would you, Akumla,
Yes,
Akumla,
yes,
would you
yes.
like to come back with your presentation? I think we lost your way.
Yeah, the internet is not very good over here, this side of Nagaland. I'm so sorry. I think I will not use my PowerPoint presentation. I will not use TPPT. I'll just read it out. I think, is it okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so I think it got disconnected in my first slides.
Not the first slide, I think somewhere after the third or fourth slide.
Okay, so did I talk, was it audible during when I was talking about the bird? The bird of a girl child?
Yes, you were talking about the rooster.
Okay, great. Okay, so a rooster is always associated with a male, a boy child. And when a boy grows up, it is expected a boy should be wise, elegant, and dignified. Whereas for a girl is always associated with the hen to be obedient, to be mild, to be gentle, and to have a good moral character. Now, when we talk about women and luck, what I've noticed is that Naga women are mostly associated with ill luck. So you have the dao and the spear. It is believed that if a woman walks over a dao and a spear, it brings bad luck. It is unlucky for the men. A female should never make announcements in the village, as it is believed that it brings bad luck for the entire village. A man should not eat meat hunted and killed and brought home by a woman, as it brings bad luck. Now, women were not allowed to come to a place where meat cutting takes place after hunting, as it was believed that the entire village gets jinxed. A woman who touches or walks over the dao or spear, she meets with misfortune, and she might die even during childbirth. So, a dao and a spear, it is believed that it might have been used to kill enemies, and a curse might have been befalled on the curse might befall on the woman who uses the dao and the spear, which has been used by men. Another interesting thing is that men should never use the dao which was being walked over by women, because it might bring misfortune to men and they might be killed even by the enemies. Now, I hope my voice is audible.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. When we talk about women and prohibition, there are lots of beliefs and sayings which are related to prohibitions. One very interesting thing is that women were not allowed to set traps for the animals, because it will bring the village will lack prosperity. Women folks were also forbidden to sow the first seed during the sowing season, because it might lead to bad harvest for the entire village. Women were not allowed to count the number of animals hunted or beheaded by the not animals, the head of the enemies, because if they count the head of the enemies which were brought to the village, it brings a very bad aura to the village, and they might get overshadowed by that village later. And girls were not allowed to cross or jump over men, as it was believed it shortens their life. But there are some, okay, there are some beliefs and sayings which reflects on the rights of women. And like I have noticed, what I've encountered is that I've encountered only one or two on the rights beliefs. And one is that the weaving shuttle, which is called as the anam, while weaving, if the weaving shuttle touches a man, then that man might remain bachelor throughout his life or will not have any child after he gets married. So this anam is the identity of woman, and we have lots of narratives related to the rights bestowed to a woman through the anam. Now, when we look into the duties, we have the one duties, and that is a belief that a woman should be back to the field after 28 days of childbirth, because it shows the completion of the cycle of moon for its next appearance. And if she does not return after 28 days of childbirth, she is considered lazy and irresponsible. And I think this reflects a lot on the contribution of womenfolk on the economy, because many a times the family's economy and income depends on the contribution of women. Another interesting belief of the Sumi Nagas is that women are not supposed to eat food before men, because it is believed that the enemies might come anytime, and men should be physically strong and fit. So, like, women are not allowed, and men should eat first before men, before like women. Now, my last is on the death. When a man dies, the family has to observe 6 days of mourning, and for a male, and for female, 5 days. Now, the number 6 is very significant for the Nagas, especially for the Au Nagas, because it is believed that there are 6 gods, and many a times 6 items are used during rituals, which are mostly led or conducted by men. And because of all this, men being the lead, 6 days are observed as mourning for men and 5 days for female. Now, it is said that women are not abused, women are not hated, women are not subjected to strict social norms, and that girls are free to participate in any social events. And it is also said that, yes, Nagas have a preference for son, but women are not discriminated. But when we look into the inheritance, women are really discriminated, because women don't get land. Women have a very less inheritance right. So all this, if we look into the beliefs and sayings, if we see a lot of all this from we take it so lightly, but from all these beliefs and sayings on woman, because woman is always taken as weak, bringing ill luck, and there are lots of prohibitions. So women are tied to social norms. Now, in my conclusion, I just have some few questions. The first thing is that why in many cases presence of women is bad for men? What about the presence of men for women? Women are always associated with ill luck, so they are synonymous with ill luck. Now we talk about the rooster, where the negative traits of the rooster is always bestowed to women and the positive to men. Then what about the negative traits? Can be bestowed to the men as well. Now, when we look into the beliefs and sayings, we have beliefs and sayings. It clearly demarcates men and women. And when we see women, they are mostly subjected in these beliefs and sayings, and which highlights men as superior. So my question comes, who constructed it? What was the intention behind all this? Girls are not allowed to cross or jump over men, as it is believed that it shortens their life. So women were taken as an agent, or women are an agent that shortens men's life. Behind all this, we see social circumstances and roles, social sanctity, social rights, we see economic contributions, duties, privileges, possessions, perspectives. And all this reflects to the societies in Northeast India where it is patriarchy and where men dominates and controls over the resources and are always considered superior. So I feel like looking into the looking into women beliefs in sayings, omens and taboos are really very important in understanding gender and how men and women were viewed and taken in the society. And women, understanding women should be contextualized within the principles that govern tribal relation and norms between men and women. And looking into it, I see that women were never taken in the same platform as men. So we need a more rigorous research on gender, on the social structure in order to understand women. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Okumla.
Yes, ma'am.
I think it was fascinating listening to all the examples that you presented.
Yes.
Again, I think it's, the fact that you're ending your paper with these questions, these are
Yes.
questions that the entire feminist discourse has been asking for decades and for centuries now. And therefore, I think the plain answers to these questions are that in patriarchal systems,
Yes.
obviously these belief systems have been generated for particular reasons, and they have been propagated for similar reasons, and which are patriarchal and misogynist
Yes.
in their very nature. But also, as I was talking in the previous paper, I think there has always been some kind of mystery around the woman's body, and mystery around the power that she can wield. I think that
Exactly.
power was sexual, that power
Exactly.
was creative, and therefore when you don't know how to combat that power, because you do find yourself helpless in the
Yes.
face of that kind of attraction,
Yes.
sexual attraction, and then I think a lot of our societies do uh, uh, you know uh, attach very little or negative value to surrender to sexual need and sexual desire. And we do attach a lot of power to self control. And
Mhm.
when you are attaching this kind of power to self control, when it comes to sexual desire, I
Mhm.
think women become the primary perpetrators or the primary problems. And therefore, then we need to be wary of them. And of
Okay.
course, wherever all these kinds of when you're describing gender roles and you're describing gender and stereotypes, you're already attributing certain qualities to men and certain qualities to women.
Yes.
The example of the rooster and the hen is so telling, because that's
Yeah.
exactly what we are seeing even in
Yes.
day-to-day experiences and our day-to-day training as men and women. And the fact that the rooster is a total contrast to the hen is exactly what we are trying to speak about all the time when we
Yes.
say that attributes that are seen as purely masculine and attributes that are seen as purely feminine are too diverse, and they are they're too autonomous, and therefore they don't make sense. And that is not where a woman lies, purely in the feminine attributes, or a man does not lie purely in a
Mhm.
rooster attributes.
Yes.
But then I think the societies have kind of benefited by keeping men and women in these watertight compartments, because probably they needed to have some kind of control over women. And I was a
Okay.
little intrigued as to why you did not bring in the modern understanding, or the modern day generation's
Mhm.
understanding of these belief systems. Do they still agree with them? Do they still subscribe to them? Do they still follow them? Or has this kind of feminist understanding, or because there has been a lot of change in our education systems, in our interactions with all kinds of discourses. Has that changed how people are now engaging with these belief systems, or how they are letting these belief systems still run their lives?
Yeah. Not in the urban areas. Urban areas, because of education, because of exposure, and because of context. But then when we go to the rural areas, we see a lot of it still being practiced, where, for example, not directly to the beliefs and sayings, but even to collect data on women, it is always the men answering it. So we see that it is still there in rural areas. Yeah. That's why in the beginning I put a slide, maybe like because of the the network, bad network, it will be difficult. Like, though it is not practiced, beliefs and sayings, it is still very strong. It is still very strong, and there is always this like man, woman, boy, girl. There is always there.
Yes, and also I think the Naga tribes have been hunting tribes primarily.
Yes.
And therefore, most of your belief systems were centered around the occupation of hunting. And there was only one example of where you mentioned how women are expected to go back to the fields 24 days, 28 days immediately after. So I think hunting tribes would have slightly different belief systems than agricultural tribes. And occupational evolution would also change, or economic circumstances of communities would also change their understanding of men and women as two distinct gender categories and what they're expected to do. So a large reason for why these gender stereotypes are now merging and they're getting blurred is also because our occupations are now becoming more gender neutral. Probably that is one reason why we have certain kinds of belief systems in certain tribes and others in other tribes. Of course, the universal fact is that there is a lot of hegemony in at least the traditional belief systems. There is a new kind of hegemony in the modern belief systems, but we're not going there. But I thoroughly enjoyed listening to your paper, because I think the one guilt that all of us must admit is the fact that we are very, very oblivious of cultures from the Northeast. And thank you for bringing that to us.
Thank you so much for giving me the platform.
Thank you. Wonderful. And now we have Narayan Mary Tom. I can see her here. And she's a research scholar at the Center for English Studies in Central University of Gujarat. And I see that she's going to bring a very interesting paper, which is Abu Ghraib's torture photographs and the changing perceptions of war in a digital era. Wonderful. Thank you and welcome.
Good morning, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Narayan Mary Tom. I'm a research scholar from the Center for English Studies in Central University of Gujarat. My paper is titled Abu Ghraib Torture Photographs and the Changing Perception of War in a Digital Era. I'll be reading out from, parts and sections from my paper. Violence provokes an enormous production of images, clips, sounds, etc. Media plays a prominent role in circulation and distribution of these enormous productions, even among those who are not directly part of the war in the modern times. The release of the most scandalous Abu Ghraib torture photographs by CBS in 2004 and the succeeding investigations about the prison management by the American soldiers in Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq revealed a shocking story of the abuses and tortures that the American soldiers had done in Iraq. This paper is an attempt to see how the emergence of the new media technologies such as digital cameras, mobile phones, and internet facilities have complicated the arena of soldier photography and war in general because of the momentum with which photographs were produced, circulated worldwide. By studying the nature of the most scandalous Abu Ghraib torture photographs. This paper tries to argue that the digital technology and image production has changed the perception of war through our photography, generating heated immediate discussions on the American saving mission in Iraq after the release of these torture photographs, the political power of these photographs to create A larger political action has not happened, and this lack of an efficient political action is because of the flooding images and their short lives in a fast digital world. The digital and internet revolution is believed to have provided a new democratic shade to war photography. The shift from a trained photojournalist taking photographs to not so professionally trained photographers and soldiers taking photography was a new phenomenon emerged during the Afghan war and Iraq war. These amateur productions were in fact far less controlled and monitored by the state and military structures, unlike the embedded professional productions. Soldier photography as a new category takes its shape in this digital era. Soldiers participating in the war becomes not only the actors of the war, but the spectators who document the war as well. Soldiers with cell phones and digital cameras who took photographs of the battlefield not only circulated it among themselves, but among their families and friends in home country, using internet facilities such as emails, blogs, photo blogs, Flickr, etc. Blogging emerged as a phenomenon during the Iraq war and Afghan war. Liam Kennedy, in his Soldier Photography, Visualizing War in Iraq, an article, notes that the soldiers running around with digital cameras are truly embedded photographers. Mostly the mundane everyday life of the soldiers and the activities they were involved in were photographed, uploaded on the internet, and sent back to their family and friends. The number of photographs of the war circulated via internet, television, newspapers, and magazines were overwhelming during the Iraq war. The availability of digital cameras and internet made soldier photography a much more complex realm due to its speed and momentum. As the amount of image production increased, war photography as a category became more complex due to the questions and debates over the authenticity and accuracy of images, as well as the larger political impact it would create on the viewers due to the immediacy with which new photographers were coming in. When the newspapers, magazines, and televisions tried to project on a selected set of photographs from the overwhelming archive, these media were trying to frame the visual narrative of the war from a particular lens, sidelining all other narratives and projections. The soldier photography, which is out of the strict government controls and censorship issues, therefore becomes an alternative narrative to the official visual narratives provided by the state embedded photographers. It is in this context that the most scandalous Abu Ghraib photographs need to be studied and analyzed. Photographs of torture and atrocities from war zones recorded by the soldiers were nothing new in the history ever since the invention of photography. These photographs of torture were taken for both personal as well as official purposes ever since the beginning. Even the most disturbing images from the Nazi camps, including images of rape, abuse, mutilation of bodies, soldier burying human bodies, etc., were covered and recorded in detail, showing both perpetrators and the victims clearly during the Second World War. These visual records were done for various reasons, such as to establish the racial supremacy of Germans over the Jews, as evidence to prove that official orders were carried out, to scare the enemy populations, to satisfy the sadistic pleasures, etc. Photography was used as an integral part of humiliation ever since then. Abu Ghraib images becomes a complex arena because of the coming of digital technologies in use. Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq became a notorious site from which some of the most disturbing war photographs got produced in the initial months of the war itself. Most scandalous Abu Ghraib images was aired on CBS's 60-minute second on April 28, 2004. In the days that followed, all these photographs were circulated widely across the world via internet and other medias. Photographs taken by soldiers in duty in Abu Ghraib using their digital cameras showed prisoners going through psychological, physical, and sexual tortures. And these photographs were meant to be self-representations of the soldiers in prison duty. Before these photographs appeared before the public in 2004, it was sent and seen by many in America through internet. It was circulated through both personal circles as well as official circles before it got released through the television in 2004. However, the release of these photographs and the debates that followed shows that, as Sondak says, photographers' intent does not determine the meaning of the photograph, because these photographs revealed a darker side of American invasion, which was unacknowledged till then, instead of just being a photograph of personal memory of the photographers and those who are seen in them. These torture photographs clearly made visible what was gone wrong with the system. At the same time, as Stanley Cohen comments in his book, States of Denial, it would be wrong to assume that the increased visibility and public knowledge of atrocities and suffering will provoke outrage or effective interventions. On the contrary, images of human rights abuses may work to further strategies of denial amongst both state and non-state actors. The debates following the release of Abu Ghraib torture photographs also shows a similar state intervention subsiding the political potential of photography. There was a gendered color to these photographs as well. It was Lindy England and Sabrina Herman who became the iconic figures of Abu Ghraib torture photographs. Lindy England was seen in thumbs-up position, smiling with Charles Greiner behind a pyramid of naked human bodies of the Iraqi prisoners at Abu Ghraib prison in one of the most iconic photographs. In another, she was seen holding a leash tied around the neck of a detainee who is lying on the ground. Sabrina Herman, the other woman soldier who became infamous, was seen in thumbs-up position, smiling and posing for a photo near the dead body of an Iraqi detainee in prison. Even though there are thousands of such photographs produced by the soldiers from Abu Ghraib, it was the images of these women that were seen and created discussions even after the release of these photographs. The entire Abu Ghraib scandal had seen a gendered color to it. Gender in the photographs invited and created a much louder discussion and shock on the women's involvement. The popular opinions were like, women in the photographs are in a full position, are in a powerful position because of the power dynamics of a war, but were seen as incapable of handling it. The publication of the thousands of photographs, the publication of the photographs of England at Abu Ghraib was perceived as a moral shock to American public because it was something unexpected of her gender. In the debates that followed the release of these photographs, England's femininity was brought into question and argued that she was a lynch gone wrong, a ruined woman by highlighting her cropped hair, her affair with Greiner, and pregnancy out of wedlock, etc. Kelly Oliver notes in the introduction to Women as Weapons of War, Iraq, Sex and Media, that although women soldiers' death in Iraq gets a very little attention in the media, women's involvement in abusive treatment of detainees at Abu Ghraib continues to haunt the American sentiments towards war. Discourses that followed the release of Abu Ghraib images shows that when women in the photographs were received with shock, men in the photographs and behind camera were justified as deviant individual behaviors. When the Abu Ghraib photos appeared on television, President Bush said, "We will learn all the facts and determine the full extent of these abuses. Those involved will be identified. They'll answer for their actions." Though the acts in the release photographs were shocking and horrifying, the larger structure that made this act and photographs possible remained unchallenged. Although Abu Ghraib torture images created a discussion and debate over the morality of American invasion in Iraq immediately after its publication, these discussions never heard during the next presidential elections that happened. Also, the Abu Ghraib images remained invisible as there were only a few images of torture that got published from various others that apparently contained images of rape of women and children, sexual assault by animal, death, etc. that was hidden from the public eye. Therefore, a study of the most scandalous Abu Ghraib photograph suggests that the new media technologies such as digital cameras, mobile phones, and the internet has complicated the visual arena of war and war photography. On the one hand, there has been a proliferation in the number of image production and in the first circulation through immediate, formal and personal circles, generating a new understanding of the modern war itself. On the other hand, its visibility in the public space has been very much controlled by the propaganda and policies of the state, that most of the torture photographs became invisible from the public visual spaces and internet. Also, those photographs which were made available for the public gaze and to trigger personal memory of the scandalous past have undergone a larger discourse of denial by the state, because the debates followed the release of the torture photographs in fact generated a denial of these acts by the state, putting the whole responsibility solely on the individuals who were visible as part of these abusive acts through photographs. Moreover, the gender lens through which these photographs were viewed, particularly the expressions of shock on seeing women engaged in such evil acts, and the discussions followed, in fact, overshadowed the political potential of photographs, as these photographs and the darker side of American invasion was not even heard in the following election itself, as it was erased from the public memory. In a digital world where thousands of photographs get produced, circulated, seen, deleted, or removed simultaneously, Abu Ghraib photographs suggest that the new technology has complicated the realm of war that is seen through photography. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I think Abu Ghraib is one of the most haunting visual experiences in the modern times. And I have a few things to say about the entire corpus of photographs that came out of Abu Ghraib in 2004. First of all, the eagerness of the Bush government to distance themselves from the acts of the American soldiers in Iraq, and how they said that these acts are basically they're not representative of, or they don't reflect the nature of the American people, and that's not how we do things in America, and that they were just, as you said, examples of individual delinquent behavior and deviant and evil behavior, and which he said is not how the Americans are fundamentally. And I think the Abu Ghraib photographs are also an example of how photographs are not only used for propaganda by the establishment or by the system to further their own issues and agendas, which most war photographs do otherwise. But here is one example of how these photographs actually subverted the very claims of the American establishment, and they became a site for a lot of protest and revolt against the acts of the American government in Iraq. I think what they had done was already being criticized, but the photographs from Abu Ghraib became almost suicidal for the very people who had taken these photographs. And since you brought in this topic in a conference which was talking about women in literature, I would have preferred you to talk about the gendered aspect of photograph from Abu Ghraib, which you did touch upon, but briefly. Yes, it was very, very fascinating to see the world's response to these two women soldiers and the photographs that they had published, and how these two women were exceptionally criticized for their torture, whereas their torture was exactly the same as what the men had been subjecting their victims to. I think the world was really surprised by the fact that women were capable of this kind of torture. But there has been this study by Stanford, and the study was much before Abu Ghraib happened, and the study was in the 1970s. And they had asked for volunteers to kind of play out the role of prisoners and officers in charge of prisons for 2 weeks. Okay, so half of them would be prisoners, and the other half would be people who would be in charge of these people. So in the prison, and they had to cut short this study way before the span of 2 weeks, because the kind of aggression and the kind of torture that the prison officers were manifesting against these others who were playing the role of prisoners became actually very alarming. And then there was a whole study of the reasons for people to subject torture on others after the study. And it was believed that, because all these people who were taken up for the study had very clean histories, very clean personal histories. They had been tested for what we call normal, for being normal in psychological psychoanalytic terms, and then they were used for this study. And then these very people who were supposed to be normal, who were supposed to be very gentlemanly, who were supposed to be good, kind, soft people, regular Americans, it was surprising for everyone why these people suddenly crossed all limits in their role play of people who were taking care of the prisoners, and how they started torturing these prisoners. So it means that it is not a predisposition of race or gender that will kind of foretell how you will behave in a situation where you have the permission to torture another person. And gender also is not always going to be a reason to decide whether you will indulge in torture or not. It is permission that you're given, or the situational permission that you have to become a person who can execute torture. So there is like a lot of psychological study that came out of these photographs, and I think it's going to be a beautiful engagement of the human engagement to understand the human mind some other time. But for now, we're running out of time. We've overshot the time limit, and therefore I would like to conclude the session. And I must say that all 4 papers were absolutely enthralling, and I loved them. They were very educative, and they brought to the table very diverse kinds of understanding of gender, though some of them were not directly dealing with gender, but I think indirectly they were extremely engaging. And therefore, I think congratulations, all of you, and thank you, organizers. I don't know if Abhyudita is still here. Like Himraj said, Abhyudita recommended me to the organizers, and therefore I must thank her as well. Thank you, and bye-bye, and all the best.